Welcome everyone to your special President's Day edition of the City Council. We have some announcements tonight. Cecilia, if you want to start off.
Sure. I just wanted to remind everybody that the month of March has been designated as National Disability Awareness Month. The Fishers Advisory Committee on Disability and the City of Fishers values its citizens with physical and intellectual disabilities. This year's 2018 Fishers March Disability Awareness Month theme is Share Your Story, which provides a month-long opportunity for people with disabilities to share their stories and encourages the community to engage in meaningful conversations about what life is like for those individuals with physical and intellectual challenges. We've organized a month-long of events, and if you go to the Fishers website at fishers.in.us/disability awareness, you'll see the calendar of events. Most of the events are free to the public. Some of them are you have to sign up for, but there's a wide variety of different things talking about accessibility in commonplace settings, employment of people with disabilities, how can employers become acquainted of how to employ people of all abilities, dementia, and also a signing workshop. We have a high number of residents that have hard of hearing challenges or who are deaf in this community, so you'll get to learn some greeting signs and learn a little bit about deaf culture. So I encourage you to go to the website. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Councilor Coble has worked very hard on this. I think over the past, 2 years now? Every waking moment, I think. So we'll just commend you for your hard work, touching a lot of lives in our community and making a difference, so I appreciate that. John, as a volunteer award update.
Whoa. Oh.
Yeah.
Lost my mic there. On Thursday, February 15th, the City of Fishers held its second annual City of Service Awards reception to honor residents' volunteerism. Held at Conner Prairie, the awards reception was attended by over 100 residents representing dozens of businesses and organizations. The following residents were recognized during the awards ceremony for their service to the City of Fishers. Fishers Parks and Recreation Youth Volunteer of the Year, Josie Lawrence. Fishers Park and Recreation Adult Volunteer of the Year, Bernard Thomason. Fishers Department of Public Works Volunteers of the Year, the Warren family. Fishers Police Department Volunteer of the Year, Art Hennig. Fishers Fire and Emergency Services Volunteer of the Year, Kyle Davis. Hamilton Southeastern Schools Foundation Volunteer of the Year, Tom Long. Hamilton Southeastern School District Teacher of the Year, Heidi Stan. Nonprofit Volunteer of the Year, Mike Rykoff, Peyton Rykoff Foundation for Youth Hope. On behalf of the council, we recognize each of these volunteers for their service to our city.
Thank you, John. Now we have Employee Service Award. Chief?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I'm a little under the weather, but I would have to be a lot sicker tonight to miss this event. Tonight we're honoring one of our consummate professionals with 20 years of service and a personal friend of mine, Battalion Chief Todd Muth. Todd, I want you to come up here with your family and stand here while I embarrass you.
Don't stand too close.
Yeah, don't stand too close. Perfect. I've got a... So, Battalion Chief Todd Muth, we're celebrating his 20 years of service. He was hired in February 1998, became a lieutenant in 2002, a captain in 2015, and a battalion chief in 2017. So as a battalion chief, we've got approximately 40 people on duty across 7 fire stations protecting approximately 90,000 residents. And I can sleep at night because Battalion Chief Todd Muth is in charge of that shift. All 40 personnel, all 7 stations protecting 90,000 people. He's an EMT. He's an urban search and rescue specialist. What does that mean? That means he gets deployed to hurricanes with Indiana Task Force 1. He is certified in confined space, trench rescue, high angle rescue, and collapse rescue. He's also been on the dive rescue team for 17 years, and if you know anything about diving in water that is not very pleasant, dives that require heavy physical exertion with entanglement hazards, prolonged bottom times, and in zero visibility, 17 years is a long time to be doing that. So much so that his leadership, he runs our special operations unit. He runs every high-profile, high-risk, low-frequency team that we have. USAR team, dive team, all the specialized response teams. And he's also a peer fitness trainer and runs our wellness and fitness program. Here's a little example of his leadership. We had approximately 4,400 lost man hours of sprains and strains last year. It was the only area of injuries we could not compress in our fire department. Todd Muth, the battalion chief and also magician, convinced everyone to take yoga.
Ah,
He even threatened to buy them yoga pants. And we were able to reduce and compress those injuries by 90% in 1 year.
that's great.
That's almost 2 full-time salaries. He has 2 safety and training awards during his career. He's been Officer of the Year. He's had 5 meritorious unit commendations. Probably his biggest accomplishment, though, is that he's married to Tiffany for 22 years. His son, Cade, 15, is here tonight, and Larkin, 11. And Dakota's off to college, 19 years old. Please give me a warm round of applause for Battalion Chief Todd Muth.
Thank you very much for your service, Fishers. Thank you. Selena, you have a Finance Committee report?
Yes, as part of the Finance Committee report, I want to provide a municipal bond market update. As many of you are aware, the markets, including the bonds, we've been in a lot of turbulence lately. So for municipal bonds, issuance fell $16 billion. It's down 50% year over year for the month of January. Municipal market delivers negative returns of about 1.1%. Returns were pulled down by the Treasury's sell-off, record-setting wave of bond deals in December, and January was the slowest start to a new year since 2011. January presented the biggest loss since 1981, and analysts anticipate that bond issuance will fall this year. On countermeasure to this is that the President's infrastructure plan may spur borrowing by states and cities outside of the muni debt sales could fall by more than a third this year. So what does this mean for Fishers? I conferred with my esteemed colleague here from Barnes and Thornburg, Rick, and we both confer that we think that bond rates are going to rise this year, most likely not until second quarter. Is basically what we come to, and I think as we move forward with our financing that we need to take that into consideration. For the meeting items, agenda items 6B, 6C, 7, 8, 9, I think I skipped 10 on my sheet here, 11, all pass the Finance Committee with recommendation to approve.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Looks like we have some scouts
Hang on real
here.
quick, Rick and Selena, maybe just really quickly on that, talking about the bond rates. What's the current municipal bond rate that Fishers pays?
Go ahead. I was gonna say, isn't it about one?
Or Lisa, I don't,
What our financial advisors are estimating on the police station issue that's up for public hearing today is between 1.8 and 3.2%.
okay. And with that potential, looking at the rise in the interest rates, what are they predicting it to move?
Well, it's hard to say. We're authorizing a maximum of 5%.
Okay.
Looks like we have some scouts here. If you'd like to come up and bring your troop up here and introduce them.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Kassler. I am the Cub Master for PAC 130. I'm also the den leader for these Aero Light Scouts tonight. They've been working hard on their highest rank for Cub Scouts before crossing over to Boy Scouts. So I'll let each boy introduce themselves.
All right.
I'm Benjamin Fox. I'm 11 years old. I first joined Boy Scouts in first grade, and I am a student at Fall Creek Intermediate.
Good job.
I'm Derek Robison.
I'm 10 years old. I joined Scouts in first grade, and I go to Sand Creek Intermediate.
I'm Christopher Kassler, and I joined Scouts at first grade and through fifth grade, and I go to PAC 130. My school is Fall Creek Intermediate, and
Good job.
I am Nate Fox. I am 11 years old. I joined PAC 130 in first grade, and my school is Fall Creek Intermediate.
Good job, guys. Thanks for being here. Yeah, and thank you for what you're doing for them. Yep. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. 6A. Okay, so David will be abstaining from 6A, for the record. All right, resolution R021918D. Chris.
Good evening, Council President Zimmerman, members of the council. For the record, Chris Greisel, City Attorney. I'm here tonight to present the rules of procedure for the Common Council of the City of Fishers. Everyone on this council has desired for a long time to have a uniform set of rules and policies by which this body conducts itself, and this document is an attempt to do just that. This document is broken down really into three overall sections. There's a composition of the council and election and eligibility, which is purely state statute, but giving some of the introductory background for how council members get to become the way that they are and where they get to be elected from. The second part is in regards to the agenda and general meeting procedures. This really gets into kind of the background of how our agendas are constructed and what a typical agenda looks like and some background information on that. The one change to the agenda that you may notice is that we're now going to attempt to group agenda items by subtopics. We think this will provide a lot more transparency to the public. Sometimes, often, a lot of our financing has some long, subject headers, thanks to attorneys like me. And so to provide a little bit more context, I think would be helpful in grouping those by topic. And the third part of this packet really is the general rules of conduct at council meetings, and that kind of gets at the heart of what we're going to talk about tonight. And although this also applies to just some general motion practice before the council, there really is two big changes. The first is adopting a uniform set of rules of public comment, public hearing, so that any member that comes to speak before you understands what their limitations are, and more importantly, from the council's perspective, provide equity to everybody who comes in fairness. So we're not allowing one member to, take more time than another. We're going to allow everybody to be a part of the same playing field. And then the adoption of a community listening session. The council's had a strong desire to provide the public with an opportunity to come speak about general city matters with a specific time on the agenda. So the community listening session or the community engagement section would allocate 30 minutes of a council meeting to the general public to come up and speak. First 10 members of the public to sign up would have the opportunity to take 3 minutes on the floor to speak to the council and to the city about any matters pertaining to city business. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but looking for the adoption of the rules of procedure tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And just to clarify, does this need to, we need to suspend the rules? Is first, second, and third reading, or is this just a?
This is just a resolution that you can approve.
Any questions or comments from council?
Motion to approve.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank
And with this implication, at next month's agenda, we'll add the community engagement listening session, and so we'll put out some information on how the general public can sign up for that and look to speak to the council at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Chris. We're going to go ahead and move, if you look at the agenda, I want to move item 12 up Next, Brandon, if you're ready to go.
Mr. President, members of the council, for the record, Brandon Dickinson, Director of Economic Development. The item before you today is an amendment to the Sun King Economic Development Agreement.
Is your mic working? Is your mic working?
It is now. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
This new technology, I'm a Luddite. It's got me
We just love hearing
flustered.
your voice, Brandon.
Thank you, sir. So to recap, the city originally entered into agreement a couple of years ago with
You
Sun
have to
King.
approach again, start
Yeah,
all over.
all over. And this is an amendment to that agreement. And I have Bob Witt and Tim Cook that are here today. If Bob wants to come up here and just talk about the project generally, this is the Sun King Culinary Accelerator Space at the yard. And so generally what the amendment will do is move some of those details to this location. So I'll let Bob explain the new Sun King location. Thanks, Bob. Thanks.
Hi, Bob Witt, president of Sun King Brewing Company. Excuse me. And I too joined the Scouts in first grade.
See what will happen? You got the world in your hands. Yep.
Originally we were looking at building a large production brewery here in Fishers, and we kind of reoriented our look at our business and what the best opportunity is up here. And subsequently, we opened the Fishers Tap Room, which has been very successful. And we have been in discussions for quite some time with Thompson Thrift regarding the yard. And we think there's just a great opportunity where we can really pardon the pun, we can feed the culinary incubator a number of customers and also help with our expertise in customer experience and provide the restrooms, the seating areas, the beverages for all of their customers. So what we're going to do is build a production specialty brewery so that we won't be making our year-round beers like Sunlight Cream Ale, Wemax Scottish Style Ale, and Osiris Pale Ale. We're going to be making all of our really cool experimental specialty beers up here in Fishers. We're actually going to be taking, if any of you have been to the Fishers Tap Room, we're going to be building a brew house there that is nearly 4 times the size, just the brewing facility, that we have currently in Fishers. And then we're going to have seating for well over 300 people. And I brought some pretty pictures here. I'll run them around. As I go around, all you need to do is say, ooh, ah, okay?
Okay. Ooh, ah. Okay.
You are still going to have those beers being available.
Absolutely.
That determined your vote, right? That determined the outcome, yeah. Oh, you are, yes, yeah.
So this is going to be a 13 to 14,000 square foot facility. We're going to be right on the yard, the green space there, very involved with the management of in collaboration with the mayor's office, the management of the Culinary Accelerator. We've already been in touch with 1933, who's going to be on the other end of the activated green space about programming the space collaboratively. It's really going to be a great thing for Fishers, and we're very excited about this project.
Excellent.
Fantastic job. So the implications for the amendment here today, as you may remember, the original agreement at that earlier location had a TIF pledge, bond pledge. So the amendment in front of you today would basically wipe that away, but then there's the other component of it is grants from the state as related to infrastructure. And so those grant dollars will flow up here to Sun King's production site at the yard. And the city's benefit is that instead of the city having to build out the common area, the bathrooms, the seating areas, et cetera, for our culinary accelerator space, we've been able to kind of merge those benefits with Sun King and them being in the culinary accelerator space. So it's a great efficiency, economy of scale for the city. And so that's what this amendment is here before you guys today. Sun King will still owns the land down there, and they'll continue, brewing on what to do with it. But we're really excited about the new location. Yeah, just a little punny, a little punny tonight. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Any questions?
Yeah, Brandon, I appreciate when you were talking about, like you and I talked just before the meeting, that there is a relinquishment of what happened, because that was a question I've heard from others and I had from the previous site, which I think this is probably a better use and a better site for you guys to go. And then the other question, which we'll cover, I think, at a later time, which is just how does this fit in to the yard development, because the yard development was set up certain uses and the performance was set up a certain way. So if this provides an infusion of different dollars, I just want to dive in just a little bit further just to make sure, but it's not for this case or for you. I want to support you guys to come in, but it's more for future cases when we have other requests from the yard.
Yeah, and we'll probably cover that a little bit more in depth when we bring the yard in the near future. Okay. But as far as pro forma goes, Thompson Thrift's pro forma does not get any better by these dollars flowing to this. This actually helps the city because that's a cost it and Sun King would have had to incur in order to build the common area.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed.
One abstain.
Oh, and Rich abstains. All right, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, back to order R021918B.
Lisa Bradford, City Controller. This is the request to approve a resolution of the City of Fishers, Hamilton County, Indiana, reestablishing a cumulative capital development fund for 2019 pursuant to Indiana Code section. I'm not going to read the Indiana Code section, but just to give a little background on this, this is not a new fund or establishment of a new fund for the City of Fishers. You can establish a cumulative capital development fund outside the property tax controls. It's subject to strict limits, and the City of Fishers uses theirs for, obviously, cumulative capital development. In 2017, the budget we used to fund the fire training facility that we're building. For 18, the cumulative capital fund development, fund will be used to further fund the fire training facility and also much-needed facility maintenance capital updates. So this fund is annually appropriated, and it's subject to the limitation of 0.05 cents, so 5 cents per $100 of assessed value. And the Division of Local Government Finance is required to adjust these rates after trending analysis and reassessment to prevent you getting undue windfall. So if you don't reestablish your CCD rate annually, it continues to decrease little by little. So for Fishers, we haven't reestablished our rate since 2014. Our rate for 2018 is 0.0481. So basically, this just gives us the opportunity to reestablish at the 0.05 if we so choose. And with that, I believe we have to have a public hearing, but if you guys have any questions.
Okay, any questions first? Okay, we'll open this up for public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, come forward, state your name and address for the record, and we do have a 3-minute time limit. Well, we now have a clock, and Brad's operating it, so hurry up, Greg. There you go.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Greg Purvis, 12271 Chiseled Stone Drive. I apologize, I didn't understand all of the presentation, but it sounded to me like it was a reauthorization of an existing fund. The item in the agenda didn't really state that very clearly. So it looked to me like it was a brand-new fund, perhaps an old fund that had expired and was being reauthorized. In any event, it looked to me to be a tax increase for which there was no clear statement of purpose in the supporting documents. I understand that this is going to go to a fire training facility and some other purposes, but in any event, it is an increase over what appears to be the current or former rate of .0481. That's not a lot of increase, and I understand Department of Local Government Finance may change that. But I would like to hear some discussion back about the necessity for this, whether or not this is a lapsed fund or a currently existing fund being reauthorized, or a new fund replacing an old fund. That's not very clear to me at this point, and so I'd like to learn more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else wish to speak? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Lisa, if you want to come back to answer any of those questions, or counselors, if you have any questions, we'll open it up for you.
I'll answer that. It's obvious, the Cumulative Capital Development Fund is an active current fund. Like I said, Fishers has had this tax for a number of years, and this fund has been in existence. Basically, by reestablishing the fund, we're not saying that it's necessarily going to be exactly the .05. However, by reestablishing it, we have that potential to do so. But at this time, it's not set in stone that it will be the .05. It's a budgetary option, but we have to reestablish the fund to have that budgetary option to do so for 2019.
So Lisa, let me understand. So we approve a budget back in November.
Yes.
The budget is set.
Yes.
And then we submit it to DLGF.
Yes.
Who then approves our budget.
Yeah.
So this fund is going to fall underneath that budget, not
Right.
over that budget.
Right, so this is for 2019, so it'd be for the 2019 budget year. The 2018 budget that was just approved and certified by DLGF has the .0481 amount in it for 2018 that I referenced.
Right, so that would then be taken up in our budget hearings back in
Okay.
November. But in
Yeah.
order to do that, you need to statutorily put it active now.
Yes.
So it will have no effect on our current tax rate.
It has no effect on the current tax rate. It is a mechanism that when we move to the 2019 budget process that we can use to discuss.
And we'll determine our tax rate when we do our budget for
Yes.
2019.
Yes,
So there's not a tax increase
It's not at this, no, it's
at
not.
this point.
Right.
Right.
So
Correct?
when we go do the budget, I think where John's getting to.
Yes.
Is that we'll take a look
That's when
collectively
the
at the
tax-
entire
Collectively,
budget to
yes,
find out whether or
because
not
there are also,
there's a
yeah,
tax
there's other
increase.
components that feed into that tax rate, so this is just one piece of it. And so when we look at the 2019 budget, we can look at this piece and see
So-
what we decide to do.
So just to be crystal clear, the citizens of Fishers can expect the budget and the tax rate that was approved in November.
Yes,
going
this
into
is not,
2018.
yes,
And-
this is purely a 2019.
And by approving this, the only thing we're doing is allowing the fund to be continued.
Right.
But then it would have to be approved in the budget next year to really have any sort of tax effect.
Right, yes, that reestablishes the fund, and by reestablishing the fund, you have the ability to go to the max rate.
Very good.
But you don't have to go to
Don't
the
have
max
to,
rate.
but you could,
Yes,
but we're not.
right, and we don't know for.
Motion to approve.
But maybe,
Yes.
but we're, yeah.
Yes, yes.
I'll-
It's still early in 2018.
The bottom line is
I
there's
can't
no
think of-
impact to Fishers
Yes.
residents right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
right.
John
Right.
John made a motion, I'll second that motion.
Okay, those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any, noes? No? Approved.
Lisa.
Thank you. All right, R021918E.
So Mayor Fadness was looking forward to present this, but you're gonna have to deal with the B team tonight. Probably the C or D team, I guess. Good evening, Council President Zimmerman, members of the council. For the record, Chris Greisel, City Attorney. I'm here tonight to present the fiscal impact of tax increment financing in Fishers. As you all know, TIF is a widely used economic development and redevelopment tool used throughout the state, and certainly a tool that we utilize here in the city. TIF policy seems to have garnered some scrutiny in recent years, particularly due to its interactions with other taxing units, and in particular the school corporations. So the city commissioned an independent report performed by Policy Analytics to describe and quantify the potential fiscal impacts of Fishers TIF policy on other overlapping taxing units, including HSE. And just for a little background, Policy Analytics is a firm that specializes in economic analysis and public finance. Jason O'Neill and Bill Sheldrake do a great job there. Tonight, we're not asking you to adopt a certain TIF policy. In fact, the report kind of gives both ends of the spectrum of the TIF policy. Instead, we're asking you to adopt the numbers in the report as facts so that when we discuss our TIF policies and how they may affect other overlapping taxing units, we can base it off of the same quantitative data. So for the public's benefit, TIF operates by capturing the property tax revenues produced by new investment within a defined geographic area to fund infrastructure and economic development incentives related to that development. So as you all know, as we go through this process, we first set up the allocation area. You then have the existing tax base in that allocation area, and then any increase in the assessed value due to new development is captured in the increment. And property tax revenues produced by the incremental assessed value is allocated for economic development related purposes. Fishers has currently 20 TIF allocation areas that have captured more than $380 million in incremental assessed value. It's $350 million since 2012. And in 2017, our TIF allocation areas generated about $8.7 million in incremental revenue. Since 2015, the city has also added about 5,200 jobs in Fishers. From a public infrastructure perspective, and I wanted to touch on this since TIF is not just an incentive to an individualized development. Since 2012, Fishers has invested approximately $47 million in public infrastructure, which includes projects like road improvements and structured parking. And unlike abatements, as I just mentioned a minute ago, which is an incentive that just impacts the business that we're recruiting, TIF applies to the geographical area, so it's an improvement made to the entire area, not just for an independent development. Regardless of the $47 million spent since 2012, most, if not all, of that public infrastructure was needed to occur here in the city of Fishers. So the result would be that if we weren't utilizing TIF to back a lot of the bonds to construct these public infrastructure improvements, we'd be utilizing a higher debt service property tax like a general obligation bond to finance most of this. So again, the benefit of TIF expands beyond just the development that we're trying to incent. The report presents two spectrums of TIF policy. On one end, you have the utilization of TIF, which caused the development to take place, and then on the other end, the development would have occurred regardless of whether you would have spent the incentive or not. So if you wouldn't have utilized the incentive, the development would have occurred. In this post-circuit breaker environment with property tax caps that we live in now, property tax revenue growth only occurs through growth in the tax base once all parcels have reached their rate cap threshold. So if you go back to this TIF spectrum, capturing assessed value in TIF means that a development that could contribute to the tax base and mitigate circuit breaker losses is instead being used to incentivize economic development expenses. Therefore, the effect of TIF on overlapping taxing units is the potential mitigation of future circuit breaker losses. When we look at the fiscal impact on Hamilton Southeastern schools, But first, it's important to look at the two dominating taxing units in our district. Hamilton Southeastern on both the Delaware Township and Fall Creek Township district tax rate comprise of approximately 55% of that tax rate, and in both the city is approximately 29% of that tax rate. So while HSE has the most potential exposure to TIF impacts, the actual effects on the school's budget are limited. And I'm going to show you a couple of reasons why that is. First, the assessed value captured in the Fishers TIF makes up a relatively small portion of the school's $7.2 billion total tax base. It makes up, if you look at this chart, approximately 5.8% of this. The other 4% is made up of Noblesville TIF, actually, through areas of Wayne Township. And then HSE certified net assessed value makes up approximately 90% of that total tax base. Second, several sources of school funding are protected from the circuit breaker losses, and thus they're shielded from our interactions with TIF. For example, HSE's general fund, which comprises about 56% of their budget, is state appropriated dollars, and those aren't affected by TIF policy in any way. Second, referendum funds are exempt from circuit breaker losses, but TIF increment AV contributes to that tax base for the referendum funds. So Fisher's TIF assessed value adds approximately $830,000 annually to HSE's operating referendum. The only impact of Fisher's TIF policy is non-referendum operating funds. In 2017, HSE lost about 1% of its total potential budget to circuit breaker losses, and these are applied to just 3 funds. So if you look at the graph being shown, the 3 to the right, the capital projects, transportation, and bus replacement funds are the ones that saw this effect. Again, the general fund, which comprises 56% of HSE's budget, is not affected, nor is the operating referendum or their referendum debt service. So the potential opportunity cost of Fisher's TIF policy are really bounded within those circuit breaker losses incurred in these property tax supported funds. So the city captured approximately $380 million in TIF increment assessed value in 2017, which produced $8.7 million in TIF revenue. Maximum opportunity cost of Fisher's 2017 TIF use is about $2.2 million applied to all taxing units. So in other words, if we wouldn't have captured that in the TIF, and it would have gone to the tax base, if you assume all that development would have occurred without the use of TIF, you're foregoing about $2.2 million to local taxing units, $1.1 million to HSE schools, which comprises 0.5% of their total budget. So in conclusion, again, we're not asking you to adopt a certain TIF policy here tonight. The purpose of this report was to provide an independent quantitative analysis of the numbers so that when we are out talking to other local governments and taxing units, we're utilizing data and quantitative analysis that's been provided. Policy lies where it is, and you all are independent to choose that policy on a case-by-case basis. So with that, I'll turn that over to any questions that you may have.
Chris, from the standpoint of policy analytics, you spoke to the fact that they are obviously a public group that does look at municipal finance, particularly TIF areas like this.
They do, yeah. They look at policy issues like this. We often utilize them when we're doing a rate case study. So the impact of a rate increase to our sewer or to any other public utility. They have great experience in doing that.
So, was obviously in cooperation with Lisa's group, they work together obviously to get the numbers and they come out with their own conclusions, correct?
That's correct. And I'll also add that Mike Reuter from Hamilton Southeastern School Corporation also reviewed this and participated in that as well.
And what was Mike Reuter's opinion of the numbers that we're looking at?
I think, I'll leave it to Lisa, but I think he agreed and was consistent with that. So the school has seen this, and we're also asking you tonight after your review of this report, Mayor Fadness would like to go make a TIF presentation to the school board at their earliest opportunity on their agenda. So he would like for you all to provide him with that direction and your approval tonight as well.
Was there any other, did the finance committee look at this at all? And
Yes, we did. Actually, Pete, just to clarify, and I think there's a little bit of confusion, this was actually first covered by the Budget Family on July the 10th, January. And it was a public meeting. Mayor Fadness didn't make the presentation at public meeting, so this document has been out in the public in one way, shape, or form for about 6 weeks.
And the finance committee obviously signed off on it as well?
We did.
And then one of the pieces, and correct me if I'm wrong, one of the pieces I heard was Mike Reuter actually pointed out some things that needed to be adjusted. So this isn't just, from my understanding in reading this isn't just the city trying to present a set of facts that we think, but it was a collaborative approach with experts, correct?
Yes, and the first version that came through, we ended up, Mike had not looked at it at that time, and so we went through and had some questions behind the methodology that Policy Analytics had used. And they had a rate that was incorrect for the schools that he caught, and that was, corrected and updated. So it's been a continuous conversation between us and the schools with this.
Okay, so it's my understanding we're being asked to approve something that has been done by Policy Analytics, obviously a professional group, that's been signed off by our finance committee, and then also given a blessing by Mike Rauter, who's CFO for HSC School System, as well as being a financial advisor to many municipalities around the state of Indiana.
That's correct.
All right, I'm gonna make a motion to approve.
Hold on one second.
Hang on,
John's
hang
got-
on.
Yeah, hold on.
And also, just take us one step further, just to be total clear, there was no, when we hire policy analytics, there was no outcome that we wanted. It was their outcome to come up with, much like when I have a client come into my office wanting their tax return, they're expecting a $10,000 refund, but when I get through with it, it's a $5,000 refund. That's as good as it's going to get because we're following the laws that are in effect right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
There was no, we want this or we want that?
No, and
Okay.
really the point, and Chris alluded to this, is that there's a lot of discussion about TIF, its use of TIF, its impact on the schools, but there's really no data to say, people are like, if you take, what are they truly losing? So this was, a real purpose of this was to really break it down and get some hard numbers so that you could have, then after this, you can have some more discussion about certain policies related to it, but there were no numbers really to back anything up.
And now we have numbers.
Now we have numbers.
If I may,
Rich, yeah, Rich.
I mean, I found it very helpful to appreciate what the impact was, because clearly there's a lot of sensitivity about TIF and what impact it does have in schools. But I guess what I would also like to ask is, for the public's benefit even tonight, but certainly as we go forward with the schools, if you could bring to light some of the many other things that we as a city do in support of the schools, so there's an appreciation that, I mean, it truly is a partnering, and I know there are grounds and snow plowing that gets done that we as a city do, because I think, again, we approach it holistically and in a partnering kind of way.
Exactly.
I know if you just shared some of it, maybe it's not worth elaborating any further than that, but I think as long as people have that appreciation.
So, certainly, and I think we have a great partnership with HSC Schools. We're working with them on a number of different projects, have in the past, and will continue to do so. Dr. Borf has been a great addition to the school corporation in the last couple of years, and we look forward to continuing that partnership.
Selena, Jude.
So, Chris, I understand that this is a foundation that we can take and we can talk to other taxing entities such as the school.
But it doesn't really take into effect of how it affects a homeowner or a business or someone like this, but we could use this as a foundation to develop those forms of communication later. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. On this fiscal impact summary sheet, you'll see that the homeowner impact on the very bottom shows about $115 for a median property. And that is the opportunity cost, again, if this development would have occurred in Fishers outside of our use of incentive, what the implication would be to a property tax. But the converse of that, what we've done to the assessed value in the city, It also holds true in the report, so certainly
Okay,
could use it as a
because
stepping
it all
stone.
kind of affects the assessed value of the
Correct.
city and how it raises the values
Absolutely.
of the homes and things like that. Okay.
I just want to say one thing. I just appreciate you doing this because we get asked a lot on this particular question regarding TIF and how it impacts our community, the schools, and I appreciate the transparency that the city is trying to provide to the citizens, and I think this is a really great report. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hang on.
Oh, go ahead. I'm
Pete,
sorry.
did you want to make a friendly amendment that this would direct the mayor to present to the school board?
So in the resolution that I drafted tonight, it actually has that direction in there, so.
Have it in there.
Thought it did.
Yeah.
I thought just for you, David.
All right, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Chris.
much. Thank you once again for your hard work. All right, where am I at?
10.
10. R021918C.
Lisa Bradford, City Controller. This is a request to hear a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Fishers, Indiana, making a preliminary determination to enter into one or more leases, commonly called the police station. So basically, this makes a preliminary determination for the city to enter into a lease with the building corporation to finance the purchase of the new police station and the public parking garage at the completion of the construction process. And to be clear, this is not, you're not adopting anything, you're just asking that you introduce this and agree on it, and then we'll be back also in March with this. So this is just, you agree and you want to move the process forward on this. If you have any questions, it's a
There was a recent change in state law requiring 2 public hearings to be held on a preliminary determination, like what's being presented to you tonight. So tonight, we're just asking that you hold the first public hearing. We'll bring it back in March for the second public hearing and final adoption request.
So no action needs to be taken.
Just open up for public.
Just to hold that first public hearing.
yeah.
Public hearing, okay. All right, open up for public input. Those that wish to speak, state your name and address for the record. We have a 3-minute time limit. You're welcome to come forward. No one wishes to speak. Close the public hearing. No further action needed on that? Okay.
Jennifer can just.
First reading, okay.
Report that a first
All right,
hearing was
first
held.
reading. All right, ordinance 021918.
Good evening, Council President Zimmerman, members of the council. For the record, Chris Greisel. I'm here tonight to present an ordinance authorizing the issuance of bonds for the purpose of providing funds to be applied to pay for the acquisition of certain real estate for waterfront recreational purposes. The city is looking to authorize a general obligation bond in an original principal amount not to exceed $5 million for the limited purpose of providing for the payment of a portion of certain property on Geist for waterfront recreational purposes for reimbursement of preliminary expenses and certain design work. These bonds are payable from ad valorem property taxes to be levied for the collection beginning in 2018. Rick Hall from Barnes & Thornburg, our bond counsel, is also here if you have any questions. I'm asking the council to suspend the rules tonight and vote this on first reading. Happy to answer any questions.
All right, first of all, any questions from council? Okay, all right. I am going to open up. Do you want to wait?
Yeah, I'll wait till
Okay,
after that,
all right.
okay.
So what I'm going to do is open it up for public comment hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Welcome, Mike.
Good evening, Council. My name is Michael Colby. I live at 7105 Cold Lake Drive here at Fishers, and I have not been to all the meetings. So is this bond that you're approving tonight the first funds that have been approved for that park, or is this in addition to the $9 million, I think it is, that had already been approved? I'm a little confused on whether or not this is an increase in what was initially authorized, or if this is just the first go-around to take care of, your engineering work. And then the other thing that I would ask is, I've tried to find some cost of what that park's going to cost, the building it out, operating it, staffing it, and so forth. And maybe that's premature at this point, but if that's available, I'd like to know where that is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else wish to speak? You come forward, state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Greg Purvis, 12271 Chiseled Stone Drive, Fishers. Just a couple of miles from where this new park is proposed to be. I want to say up front, I'm generally a big fan of park projects, but a couple of the items here disturb me. Number one, and I think Mike Colby just referred to it, about what the total cost for this park is, its future maintenance and so forth. Particularly with the marina, which is going to compete with other marinas in the area, that's going to cost quite a bit on an annual basis to maintain, as well as some of the other features of the park. Now, it was my understanding, if I recall correctly from the published reports, that the court appraisers in the eminent domain proceeding came back with a valuation of $15.7 million. Is that correct? If the prior bond was $9 million and this is $5 million, that doesn't quite cover that cost if that report is correct. Then the court still has to approve that and enter that as its final judgment. And like Mr. Colby, I wonder how much more this is going to cost. This could turn out to be an extraordinarily expensive project. And I recognize this is virtually the last space available on the reservoir and the only public space on the reservoir proper, although there is a county park just a little above where Fall Creek opens out into Geist Reservoir, Geist Park, right off Florida Road, which is a nice little park. Doesn't have a marina. It's got some picnic areas and walking trails and a nature area that's essentially a swamp. But it's a nice place to go take a hike if you don't mind getting eaten by mosquitoes. And it gets you a nice view of the opening of the reservoir. So I recognize the wish for this. I worry a little bit about the expense. I have some unanswered questions about the bonds towards the purchase price. And so I would appreciate that information. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else wish to speak? All right, I'll close our public comment hearing.
So yeah, just to follow up on a few of the questions that were presented. So the council has, the RDC has already agreed to acquire part of this property, and the council has issued a $12 million bond for that purpose. Tonight, this is a separate acquisition that the city is going to acquire. So the RDC is going to own part of the property, the city is going to own part of the property as well, and a not-to-exceed bond expenditure of $5 million. The city, really step one in this whole park process is acquiring the land, and that's what we're looking to do right now. Although we have a conceptual plan for what the park may look like, no design has been issued yet. After we acquire this property, we're really looking to have a public engagement to see what residents really would like to see in an open park like this out in Geist. There is no public marina plan for this park to date, and so I think that covers all the questions. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to entertain those right now.
All right, council, any questions or comments?
Yes, as many of you know, I am opposed to this expenditure, but I am glad that we have opened this up for public hearing tonight to allow comments from the public. I have concerns that the project is starting out costing more than expected. Furthermore, we have no data indicating an approximate range to maintain the land until a park is built, no indication of a cost to dredge a portion of the lake, no cost information or even a range to build a park or to maintain a park after being built. The lake is an amenity to our community. It's a beautiful amenity. However, this lake has not been well-maintained by the water company, the city of Indianapolis, the homeowners surrounding the lake, or fishers, and we should all be partners in maintaining this wonderful asset. However, homeowners can create a conservancy district to tax the landowners around the lake. However, this has not been done to this point. And I've always told my kids, I will help you when you help yourself. And I believe that in this situation. And speaking with Mr. Greisel, he stated that there's homeowners who's willing to step up and to help, and I would have liked to have heard from those homeowners on that this evening. I find it odd that the city is willing to step up and assist with cleaning the lake when in my district we presented a case in which a family was having issues with erosion of a natural drainage ditch in his backyard, and some of the water from the local streets was even being drained into the ditch. Yet the city told him that we were not responsible. How can we take responsibility for cleaning up a mess in one person's yard, but yet not being willing to help another? Another issue is that if we dredge the section of the lake, we have shown a willingness to take more of a responsibility for cleaning the lake. Given that we are the only entity stepping up to clean the lake, I'm concerned that this is a slippery slope and that we will be expected to be responsible for cleaning larger and larger sections of the lake as time passes. This is not an expense for taxpayers of Fishers. We should not be totally responsible for this. In my opinion, the lake is a huge black hole which we could dump tens of millions of dollars into cleaning it up, into the maintenance, and it just scares me that there's no other entity stepping up. The community is already taxed by our public service officials, our public safety officials. They're out there to maintain the safety on the lake, and I think that it's a slippery slope. So I will be voting against this evening. This has weighed very heavily on me this week, and I'm hopeful that we can move forward with this as a council and administration, and because I really like the way that we have included the public comment to strive for greater transparency.
Thank you, Councilor Stoller, for your comments. Anyone else wish to speak in the council? Have comments or questions? Nobody?
You ready? You go.
Go ahead.
I appreciate your comments, Selena, and the way I looked at it, as I do try and look at, any investment that we make or decisions that we make that are fiscally related. And I think what helped put this in perspective for me, and I hope for the public's benefit, is that, clearly we rely on taxes to support ourselves. And I believe that the estimated assessed value in the Geist area for Fishers is $1.5 billion. Represents a huge amount of tax revenue that we receive to Fishers. I think we also recognize that Geist is at a critical stage. I mean, there have been incidents out there, and I think between overcrowding and other, and I don't disagree that this is a bigger subject. My fear is that if there is an event that is catastrophic or other, that then creates a real serious problem to residents around the lake, and then ultimately affects property values. That if there's a 10% loss in property values, that loss is about $150 million that we lose in assessed value in that area. And so while I think we all will remain vigilant and concerned about the overall investment, the fear is, and I think there's the effect of what could happen, but there's also the benefit of what can happen too. So I'm excited to see what may happen, but honestly, I look at it and say, this to me is an investment that's worth making for not only that reason, but that's a big part of why I'm going to be supporting it.
Thank you, Councilor Block.
And I think that as the Geist representative had been, in and around this Geist stuff for years and years and years, including the annexation, one of the things that we had talked about during that annexation time was to have a public space on the main body of the lake. Mr. Purvis indicated you have Geist Park, and it truly is a county park. It's actually a very nice park, and I've been down there often, but at times during the summer, you could not make it to the main body of Geist unless you wanted to get out with a kayak sometimes and push it halfway there through the mud. So I think when you're starting to take a look at, and this isn't just a myopic 10, 15-year look. I mean, when you're looking at public spaces like this, you've got to take that long-term look of a 50-year plus, type of arrangement. And I don't know if we know the way it's going to look, but from everything that I've been hearing from the Geist residents, and I just read through a couple more of them a minute ago, it is overwhelmingly being supported by the residents of Geist. For a lot of the things that Rich had indicated, from the assessed values out there to if they take a dip in assessed value, it has a catastrophic kind of thing to our catastrophic event to our budget. So we need to look to maintain that. The safety issues that permeate itself on Geist due to the number of boats that are being put on that lake, and I know we continue to try to figure out a way to go ahead and manage that as well. But what we're looking at right now is we're trying to look at a piece of ground that really, if it were being allowed to develop, and Chris, please correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I remember seeing, we were looking at 80-plus houses, each with additional boat docks on them, okay? And that's a massive amount of continued traffic out in that lake. And in my mind, it would further degrade, okay, the assessed value that's going to be out there, because these homes were much smaller in terms of the original zoning which were there. They were going to have a lower price point than most of the houses on Geist, which would then potentially, pull down that assessed value of another home that's very close, particularly the ones on the lake that were there. Again, this is very much an effort by the city to protect an asset known as Geist. We are making no bones about cleaning it up. We don't plan, this has nothing to do with cleaning up Geist, right? Whether we act or don't act on this, the cleanup efforts that need to continue on Geist are a much larger conversation, because there's so many mitigating things that go on in there, from the watershed that goes all the way up through Delaware County and maybe even above, from the farmers, down to just the neighborhoods which are letting phosphorus leak into the lake, the boat launch and the boat marina currently, by people pulling their boats in and out of different waterfronts that are allowing pervasive species to come onto the lake, continue to be a problem for us. So if we allow additional homes on that lake, we're going to be subject to potentially lower net assessed value by the other homes there, causing a ripple down effect. We're also going to allow them to put an additional 80-plus boat docks on the lake, which we can't afford to have one more boat on the lake as far as I'm concerned, with the high traffic that continues there. And then I think you've got to look at this thing globally, right? You've got to look at it from a long-term perspective. Morse has a public park on the lake. Eagle Creek has 2 public parks on the lake. Monroe has 2 public parks on the lake. Wawasee has a public park on the lake. And I'm talking main bodies of lakes. If you guys want to pull in Geist Park in the main body of Geist, I would disagree with you. That's not a main body to this lake. Again, the residents in the area are overwhelmingly in favor of moving this to parkland, and it be passive park, right? So you're not going to have the mitigation of, 4,200 soccer people coming in there to play soccer because the fields aren't going there, right? This very much is going to be, left as an amenity to the community at whole that are able to go and use the lake. What plans they take on, I don't know what plans they're going to take on. There won't be a marina, that I can tell you. There's no marina planned. If I have my way, I'd like to get rid of another marina on the lake, but that's a whole separate issue, okay? I think you need to take a look at this. How is this going to be paid for in the future? I'm pretty sure the city can figure that out with the financial means that they have at the time, and they'll continue to do it prudently, right? We continue to do things prudently every time we take a step, right? All the things that we have done, in the downtown area and in the other areas are done very prudently by making sure that we're maintaining the citizens' tax rate, and we're not going to go ahead and levy those kind of expenses on the taxpayer unless we can afford to deliver what we're saying we're going to deliver. So again, I don't want to think this thing is just going to blow up out of control and it's going to go to some massive project and turn into Wally World or something, right? That's not the point of this. The point of this is to protect the asset that we have, protect the home values that are there, protect the safety on the lake, and continue to work for a long-term solution for the viability of that lake before it potentially goes toxic. And, again, I am a massive advocate because my constituency is a massive advocate. But I will tell you that I will fight pretty hard to make sure that the park is maintained in a passive nature, that it's done prudently with the funds that we can afford to do in its time, and it may be staged in. There may be additional groups that can come in there and help fund those things. We don't know that because we don't even know what we want to do there yet. What we want to do is we want to stop 80 homes from being built and 80-plus boat docks being built on that lake. So for me, this is an absolute no-brainer, to go ahead and secure this land for the future viability of the lake and for every single citizen that lives in the city of Fishers. So I am a massive supporter of getting this done.
Thank you.
I also agree with Pete in his statements there. I hope that this is a catalyst to bring the Geist community, the Geist Reservoir community together to look at long-term viable solutions to really make that lake stronger in terms of the water quality, the safety, and that hopefully with Fishers now looking at making this a park, that it'll help to bring all of that together, because it is our biggest asset that we have, and it will be a way that the community as a whole can take part in that and be able to use part of that park eventually. So I'm supporting.
Thank you, Councilor Coble.
So this is part of a broader conversation. I chaired the Land Use Committee on the 2040 plan, and this was something that came up as part of that, was there's no real park on Geist Reservoir. And, I don't live on Geist, I live close to Geist. It would be nice to have a way for residents who don't live on the water actually an opportunity to have to enjoy the reservoir. Kind of speaking more on how do you go about taking care of the reservoir and treating that? Well, I think what we're doing is that first step. We're taking 80 to 90 homes and not having that happen on our reservoir. We're going to have a passive park that's going to be worked in collaboration with a number of residents out in that area to have a really great park. Much like, if you think back, Flat Fork Creek, I have to watch how I say that, how we started with that. That was just land that was out in Fall Creek just sitting out there, and we went through a process to really plan that out, and that's an awesome park. I challenge any community to have a park that's, I sound like a stockholder, more awesomer, okay, than that park. And this will be another opportunity to build another awesome park in our community. I've never been bashful about supporting parks regardless of where they're at. Even though they're not in my district, they're close by, I'm going to enjoy it. So I'm supportive of this, and if you don't mind, I'll make a motion to suspend the rules.
Second.
So just so we're clear, we're making a motion to suspend the rules, not to approve, just to suspend the rules. There's first, motion by John, second by Pete. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, unanimous.
Motion
That's
to approve.
approved. Now, motion to approve by Pete,
Second.
second by Rich. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
All right, so it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for your comments. Moving on to 13, ordinance 091817.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Dale Davis. I'm a planner with the City of Fishers. The next item is a text amendment to the Nickel Plate Code for gateway architecture. This one had a first reading a few months ago. When it went through Plan Commission, there was a lot of discussion about one item in particular, and that was the multifamily component. That has been removed from the version that's in front of you. Plan Commission asked us as a condition of their approval to take a little bit more of a look at that, and after looking at it, staff has decided to remove that portion. The other pieces of this document have not changed significantly since you've seen it last. We are still looking to update the road sections, make those match more what our road plans are now that we have some construction happening out there. Some of our definitions have been more closely aligned to the UDO as well as to, again, the uses that we're seeing out there. And some clarification on parking and how deliveries are handled, some more nuts and bolts things that are just kind of an evolution of what we've seen happening around the Nickel Plate District. And also we want to update the conceptual master plan. We like to do that every year just so we can make sure we're adjusting our master plan and keeping it on pace with what we're seeing around the Nickel Plate. With that, I'm happy to take any questions. Staff would like to ask for your final approval.
I want to clarify something real quick.
Yes.
It says third reading on our agenda, and then on the packet, the council action form, it's marked second and third reading. Do we need to suspend?
No, so if you recall going forward, we updated our council rules
Correct.
to mimic state law. So now all planning and zoning matters are going to go to the plan commission for a public hearing, and then they're going to come back here to the council for a final reading.
So we're good, okay.
You're good.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to verify we're all on the same page. All right, any comments? Questions from council?
Yeah, just, Dale and Tony, just, I know that we talked and you heard from Plan Commission to do that multifamily component. I appreciate you guys listening and making some changes, so thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Motion approved.
Motion by Pete,
Second.
second by Selena. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Thank
Thank you, Dale. Yep. Okay, moving on, ordinance 101617F. Tony?
Good evening, Tony Bagato, Director of Planning and Zoning, and I will say this is probably the most unique text amendment I've done in 17 years. It is to deal with removing cemeteries from our residential district, allowing chickens at schools for school
That is
purposes.
quite a move.
And also amending our PUD process that will require the architectural drawings to be approved on the front end of the PUD process, which is what we've been doing the past year, kind of implementing again a portion of the comp plan, which talked about enhancing our architectural standards in our review process. So with that, staff is recommending the amendment. The cemetery will be restudied as a land use. Staff's actually looking at proposing it only in open space in the new use standards for the new UDO, but currently they're allowed in every single residential zone, which we don't feel is a fit everywhere. And as you recall, the council asked staff to address the chickens being allowed at schools for educational purposes. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Motion approved.
Motion by Pete,
Second.
second by Selena. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay? No? All right.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Moving on, ordinance 112017A.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Kevin Stutz. I'm the Assistant Director for the Planning and Zoning Department. The item in the text amendment before you is to update the city's surety standards, which are located in our Unified Development Ordinance. This section specifically outlines the city's requirements for performance and maintenance bonds to ensure all public facility improvements are installed, completed, and maintained in a manner satisfactory to the city's requirements. Minor amendments were made to provide consistency between local and state code requirements for surety standards, and I would point out that probably the major change in this update is the new requirement for a 3-year maintenance bond for all sidewalks constructed in the public rights-of-way. This item did go before the Advisory Plan Commission at their January meeting, and they sent a positive recommendation to council. Staff, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, but we would ask that the council approve the amendment as proposed.
Any council questions, comments?
First of all, thank you very much for getting the sidewalks in. It's only taken me 3 years, but we got it. I appreciate it very much.
Small victories, Brad, small
Right.
victories.
Government moves slow. No, I'm sincerely, especially the residents of Britton Falls, sincerely thank you for all your effort. Thank you.
Motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Pete, second by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have one other question after you take the vote.
Okay, so it's passed.
Are all the builders and developers aware of this?
Yes, as we reached out to Baggy as well as, public hearing at Plan Commission, so we felt that, this amendment has been available for the past 3 months. feel
Okay,
comfortable
so
with
if the
where we
mayor
are.
signs it tomorrow, then it's in effect?
Yes, for those permits that apply to, yes.
You won't sign it tomorrow. Be Thursday.
Come on, we can scan it to them. Ordinance 121817A. Taylor?
Good evening. For the record, Taylor Navarre. I'm a planner with the City of Fishers here. The item before you tonight is a proposed text amendment to the Parkside PUD as it pertains to the Story Point of Fishers Senior Independent Living Facility. The project is on the east side of Parkside Drive, just north of East 126th Street there. The site is part of the overall Parkside PUD that, among other uses, does allow for senior living facility. That was established in 2011 for a separate project. This text amendment seeks to repeal and replace that to better fit the Story Point of Fishers project with certain development standards, size, as well as a tree preservation area to the east, eastern portion of the project. As part of the process, the project did go before council for first reading in December, as well as PUD committee in January and Plan Commission earlier this month. After hearing several concerns at first reading in regards to the proposed vinyl siding as an allowed exterior material, the petitioner did make some revisions and remove that from the ordinance and has in there that hardy plank will be the exterior material where masonry is not featured. So the renderings here are part of the overall ordinance as well as the concept plan, and again, those were approved by the PUD committee. So overall, staff is supportive of the request and would recommend final approval here tonight. The petitioner is here. They're not going to make a formal presentation since it went before you guys in December, but they're here to answer any questions that you might have, as well as myself. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Just, I'd like to thank the gentleman for bringing, Fishers is growing and the percentage of the over 55 is increasing, so we're going to need more and more of this, so we thank you very much for bringing it.
Wow, well, that's good. Good grief.
Hey, Joe, did you need to make any comments at all?
Yeah, was there any?
Addition or no? I just wanted to kind of point out, and there was some remonstrance at Planning Commission, and Rich wasn't there, well, Brad and I were there, and I wanted to remind everybody, this particular property, when it came before us, which I think David, you and I and John were probably the only ones who were there, was originally zoned I-3, right? So it was industrial at that point, and they came in with another, I don't remember, was assisted living or independent living type of arrangement, and I don't remember hearing any remonstrance at that one, but you know, so when you moved it from an industrial type of setting over to this particular thing, I was telling the residents, well, you could have a manufacturing plant there if we didn't rezone it beforehand. So I kind of looked at that, and I think certainly the petitioner group has done a terrific job working with our staff, and I appreciate that. I'm supportive of the measure. I think it's in a good location for that. I think it'll offer ample buffer to the neighborhood, and I think there'll be excellent neighbors there as well. So if there's no other comment, I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion by Pete,
Second.
second by David. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's approved. Thank you. Moving on to ordinance 021918A. Kevin.
Again, for the record, Kevin Stotts. We have another text amendment to the city's Unified Development Ordinance, and this one applies to the city's sign standards. There was a Supreme Court decision for the Reed versus Town of Gilbert, Arizona case, which established that all content-based sign classifications and categories should be removed from municipal sign standards. Sign standards should be restricted primarily based on zoning districts, property and building sizes, and property frontage along public rights-of-way. So that's exactly what we've done with our sign ordinance. This is a removal, so just a quick overview of the text amendment in front of you. We have removed all content-based sign classifications. We've also removed any related definitions that are content-based. We've located some of our pond safety signage to our design standards. We feel that those are important, but the appropriate place should be in the design standards section of the UDO. And we've also corrected minor errors with individual zoning labels. So with that, we feel that we are compliant with the sign standards for our municipal code, and we would recommend approval.
Thank you, Kevin. Any comment?
You guys do a good job, Kevin, keeping up with all the laws in the state of Indiana, our federal government, and everything else. And Fishers, I think, does a good job responding when there's Supreme Court cases and adjusting to it. We may not always agree with it, but we got to go with the law of the land. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Pete. Second by Cecilia. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Kevin. Ordinance 021918B.
That was actually pulled from the agenda.
Oh, that was pulled. Yep, sorry. Item 18 was pulled. On to 19, ordinance 021918C.
Good evening once again. Tony Bagato, Director of Planning and Zoning. This item before you is an open space rezone that is being done kind of as part of the transparency of rezoning a property that was actually already designated open space as part of the PUD. If council recalls, we approved the Geist Manor PUD, and in the PUD, it was designated for residential to the north of Florida, 113th Street, and then on the south side was dedicated to the city, including land for the roundabout, about 40 acres, including 4 parcels that went into Luxhaven for future park space. And in the PUD today, it's zoned PUD R, but in the PUD designates this as open space and only open space uses. The city is now the owner of that land about 3 weeks ago today, and so in conversations with our city attorney, we thought it was best to rezone it from the PUD to open space directly, so it's within our own zoning classifications on our maps. So this item is part of our continued discussion around the parks and greenway connectivity around Geist. And so we feel that this is a crucial area for development of the park space. And that park space is also not programmed today like the other one we talked about. We plan on having discussions with the community and the surrounding property owners when that is developed. So at this time, we're just asking for it to be zoned open space, and staff's here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tony. Anybody with comments or questions, council?
Yeah, it was about 40 acres, yeah.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Pete. Second by Selena. All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. We're on to any unfinished or new business. Anything new? Okay.
So I had a quick question really
Yes.
for Chris. This is more process related, just from my understanding. So before, we always had a first reading, like a zoning ordinance. We'd have the first reading, it goes to Plan Commission, it comes back, and you could either vote on it then, but it had to be unanimous, or it would go to the final, it would go for another month. So in essence, it gave time. Sometimes we want time to kind of work on information. Sometimes it's the other way around with staff. So now it goes to the Plan Commission first, and then when it comes, what happens? Can we vote? Do we have to vote on it, or can be delayed 1 month?
On those zoning amendments, you have 90 days to consider the action that's been taken by the planning commission. So if the planning commission certifies a proposal for your approval, you have 90 days to consider that. If you don't act within 90 days, that becomes law. That is what the planning commission certifies as proposal.
Yeah.
So whether that item gets on the first agenda right after the planning commission meeting, or whether you want to table the consideration for a future meeting is all within the
But again, if it comes back there, can anyone, I'm not saying you want to stymie things, it's just sometimes it helps to kind of slow down the process to get information. But how is that? If everybody says, hey, we want to vote on it, is that fine? Can one person restrict that?
So you have to have a motion to table that, and that would have to be majority.
Okay.
So if we put it on the agenda, so if there's a planning and zoning item on, and
that's not approved, then it would move forward and it would be voted on. Okay, so we do lose a little bit of flexibility. Not saying we need that, but there's a little bit less.
I would like to point out too, that we are now publishing our legal notices for the Plan Commission online, and we are working on making sure that the council's copied on any links for items that go to the Plan Commission, so you still have, now you'll be aware of what's at least being noticed, so if you do see anything on the agenda for Plan Commission, feel free to also call us and contact us. So we are trying to be more transparent with that, so you guys are still a little bit in the loop of items that are going to hearing before you see it.
All right, thank you. Okay. Before we make a motion to adjourn, I do want to open up for general public comment. We will be doing this from here on out, so at the end of each council meeting, we'll open it up. You're welcome to approach the podium, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak, and it can be open to anything that you have questions about, comments about regarding the city. It does not have to be based on anything on the agenda. What we do ask you is just to be appropriate with your comments, any emotions or anything, just to keep those in check. And remember, this is streaming. You know, I think, are we live right now? Or we will be at some point, but this is taped. So just be respectful, but we're open to any comment. So I'm going to open it up right now for a general public comment. You have 3 minutes. Yep, thank you. Okay, Mike?
Well, I see I got 3 minutes.
Yes, you
Holy
do.
cow.
There's-
Well, I have talked to a couple of you beforehand about your procedure on eliminating first reading. And I just want to say, having been on the council, there's a benefit to having first reading. Sometimes when you have first reading or don't have first reading, you're sending a message to a developer, this ain't going to fly. So that's a tool that you're doing away with, and I would recommend taking a closer look at that. The other thing, if it does come in from the Plan Commission and you've got it for the first time as a body and you have to make a decision, if there's a substantial change to that particular piece of zoning, then it's got to go back to the Plan Commission. So you're not speeding anything along. And I appreciate Chris giving me some guidance on that. I think some things are pretty clear, but like when you get to a PUD, it's a little more difficult to kind of determine what's a substantial change. So I just ask you to reconsider that in your thinking. I think it's a benefit to you to have first reading. You can set the parameters on what is presented at first reading, if you want elevations or you don't want elevations or whatever. 1:45 seconds left. I know you're planning to do some stuff with the Sparks Fishers or Fisher Sparks or whatever it's called. The little Fourth of July thing.
Spark Fishers.
I've met with a few of the councilmen already. I would like to ask you to consider having an antique car show as a part of that. I happen to have a 29 Model A, and I'm in a Model A club. And a lot of the jurisdictions around us, Noblesville, McCordsville, Carmel has a heck of a show. So if you're going to do something, maybe that's something you could put in that week, and then you might have to take a look at doing some road configuration so the cars can back in, people can look at them and so forth.
That's a great idea.
And if you have it, I'll be there. I have 58 seconds left, 54. And I want to thank you for bringing up your procedures. When I was on the council, that was always kind of a nebulous area. And you've guys at least put it in a document that the public can see, you can see, and it gives some consistencies. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I have 37. I yield my time.
You yield your time, thank you. It does not go to the bank for somebody else to use, by the way, okay?
Lee, did you take that note for the, okay, good for you.
But that's, Mike, thank you for those comments. Spark Fishers, I mean, every time I see something, there's more people in the community involved. And so, Mike, just those comments right there. I mean, Leah's doing a great job, city staff, just to get people from all walks of life in our community involved in that. So I applaud you, Leah, the staff. Mike, thank you for those comments. Open for any other public comment? Anybody wish to speak? Okay, close it. Motion to, was there one? You want? You can. You don't have to be voting age to come up here. You're welcome to come speak. He'll take the 3 minutes? Well, okay. All right, we're going to close the public comment portion. Motion by Pete to adjourn.
Second.
Second by David. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.